thing here is the date, right? Born in 1980, died in 1983. 83. Should sound familiar, right? Well, why does it matter? Fnaf 4. Fnaf 4, a game that ends with someone getting themselves bitten, is not depicting the bite of 87 like we all assumed when we first saw that scene, but instead is a game that is set in the year 1983. It frustrated everyone. I mean, why would you choose to do that, Scott? It made no sense for the story that we had become familiar with by that point in the series. It made no sense until today. We know that the gravestone is real. We know that Henry truly has a daughter who dies and goes on to become the puppet in the games. So what if that death took place in 1983 like we see in the book? Opens up a lot of possibilities. You see, the other thing that never quite gets explained is this empty girls' room that we're allowed to explore throughout FNAF 4's minigame. Clearly, there's a reason it's here, but we never get a clue as to why or who that room could belong to. This, in turn, led all us FNAF theorists to speculate wildly about the owner of this room. Anyone with 2 X chromosomes was up for debate. This pigtail girl, and that was it. Honestly, because she was literally the only girl that was introduced into the series at this point. Later, when Sister Location came out, we got ourselves a second girl, and everyone celebrated. It was AFTON's daughter, Elizabeth, so that room had to be hers, right? I mean, the game was even alluding to it being hers because it was the Sister Location. But let's stop for a minute and question all of those assumptions, because that's what they are, really. There's not a whole lot of proof here. What if that girl's room in FNAF 4 belonged to Charlie? Charlotte, Henry's daughter, who dies in 1983. I mean, the room is empty, after all. And we're not seeing a whole heck of a lot of girls wandering around the playground area. And the year certainly matches the year of the disappearance and death from the books. Could that girl's room in FNAF 4 actually be Charlotte Emily's room? Could this whole house from FNAF 4 actually be the Henry Emily household? Consider this. In the second novel, The Twisted Ones, a climactic final battle happens in an underground animatronic facility. Sounds a bit like our Sister Location. When our heroes emerge to the surface, they find themselves in the ruins of a familiar house. Here's the quote. "Don't you see where we are?" Charlie whispered. "John, it's my dad's house. It's the room we found." The underground facility isn't under William Afton's house. Instead, in the books, it's hidden under Henry's house. And now, what do we see in the games? A hidden facility buried directly under the FNAF 4 house. A house that we've been assuming up until this point to be Afton's house. But it's starting to look more and more like it might be Henry's. And that's not all. Let's take a minute to flash back to FNAF 6, shall we? Now, overall, I feel like we've done a pretty darn good job of wrapping up this game's loose ends. We know all the names on the different gravestones. We know what Candy Cadet is rambling on about. We know that Fruity Maze Girl here is Susie, who gets lured away and stuffed into Chica. Heck, we even know that the game itself, this building, could be the potential box where the pieces all come together and eventually get burned away. But the one thing that we don't know is the answer to Midnight Motorist, a minigame that, true to form, was the one moment in every FNAF game where everyone collectively looks at the screen and then slams their head on the desk. What? There's an orange guy now? Who the heck is the kid? Where did he go? Why is his window broken? Why are there footprints outside of the window? What is going on? I mean, we have smoothed over so much of this franchise, and I feel so confident about so much of this lore, and that game, that one little mini game is the one that just like niggles the back of my mind. If I could ask Scott Cawthon one thing about this entire franchise, this is the one that I'd want him to explain. No joke, I don't care about anything else. This is the one that I feel so befuddled on, why I'm so determined to solve it, and why I'm doing today's theory. Because in the past, I've felt fairly confident saying that the mustard man here is William Afton, because he drives a purple car and he's driving away from the scene where the puppet girl died. But now, I'm not so sure. It always bothered me, and literally everyone else, that a guy who has been associated with one color, the color purple, for the entirety of this franchise is suddenly orange. I tried to dismiss it as Scott pulling a Scott, but you know, that's not the most satisfying answer. It doesn't feel conclusive, you know? And more importantly, those footprints outside of the window, I mean, why are they there? Either an animatronic went to meet this boy outside of his window, but that seems unlikely based on how we know these animatronics behave, or it was someone in a costume showing up to lure the boy out of his room. That one definitely seems like the more likely solution, but the only person in the entirety of this franchise who would do something like that is big ol' Willie A. And why would he do something like that to his own kid in his own house and then get mad about it? Things just don't add up cleanly. It's a question that really started to bother me when I was playing Fnaf VR Help Wanted. Glitch Trap is clearly modeled after the first suit ever used by William Afton. You can tell based on his stitching. This is a hand-sewn bodysuit rather than any sort of animatronic suit that we would see later in the series. This also coincides with the timing of the Midnight Motorist cutscene, which shows the birth of the puppet, one of the first major deaths of the entire FNAF story. Glitch Trap's suit also very distinctly has 3 toes, just like the footprints outside of the boy's window. Now, as we know, Scott Cawthon likes to clarify things in his next game. And if there was one huge question mark left from before, that Midnight Motorist minigame was it. So we have ourselves a suit that would have been in use around the time of the minigame, as well as a matching foot pattern to the design that we see in the minigame. Heck, we even have ourselves a potential reference to it from Ultimate Custom Night and the Toy Chica cutscenes.
He'll be mine by the end of the day. I just know it. I told him to come over later. That should be enough. And if he doesn't show up, I'll just go to his house. And if he doesn't open the door, I'll just find a window.
And here's where everything starts coming together. Let's assume that William Afton, in his Glitch Trap suit with its 3 toes, is the one who's standing outside of that window, outside of Henry's house. He lures the crying child out, now Henry's son, to bring him back to the place that he loves more than anywhere else in the world, Fredbear's Family Diner. But we know that this is also the night where William takes his first victim, Charlotte, who's killed outside of the diner. This would explain why in FNAF 6, the crying child would actively run to Fredbear's against his father's will, but later, come FNAF 4, he would be terrified of stepping foot there. Remember what you saw and all that, as psychic friend Fredbear reminds him constantly. He saw the murder happen that night. That is what we're seeing in that FNAF 6 minigame. Meanwhile, we have ourselves the Mustard Man, who we're assuming is gonna be Henry. He has a kid who has not only run away on multiple occasions, but is so determined to do so that he's willing to break through his own window to get there. So how do you keep him safe at home? Well, you lock him in his room, just like we see happen in FNAF 4. But maybe locking him in his room isn't enough. Maybe you also have a series of security cameras hidden around the room. Heck, hidden around your house, hiding a security camera inside the Fredbear plushie that he takes everywhere, to keep your son safe, to keep track of where he is at any given point in time. Heck, maybe you could go so far as to design sound illusion discs to make him scared of the animatronics that he's seeing. His once beloved animatronic friends now terrifying to him, causing nightmarish hallucinations of the characters. Just like the discs that we see hidden inside of Funtime Freddy's chest and sister location. The same discs that Henry is confirmed to have created in the books. These two, right here, they play a huge role in these 2 books. Though most of them in the books bear Afton's name, they were originally created by Henry in an attempt to warp the world around him, to hide from the grief that he felt after the loss of his child. Discs that, wouldn't you know it, Afton hides inside the Funtime robots, just like we see in the games. But as we see in FNAF 4, it isn't enough. The crying child still winds up at Freddy's, he still gets himself bitten, and he dies. With that iconic line in yellow, "I will put you back together." Now, remember that quote I keep going back to in this book right here, second to last page? Thoughtful fans might want to revisit sections of how Henry and Afton's view of the robots change over time in order to determine how they impact the story of the games. Well, Henry in the books uses the robots to bring his daughter back to life. He rebuilds her. He puts her, quite literally, back together. He used the robots to try and heal his grief. I mean, if anyone in this series is gonna say a line like, "I will put you back together," it's Henry. Heck, maybe Mustard Man is the color that he is in order to better match the color of his FNAF 4 text. "I will put you back together" in yellow. And yeah, sure, It's yellow and not orange, but guess what? Purple guy was pink in his first outing. As the series has gotten darker, so too has the color palette. But seriously, they're two colors that are relatively similar. Maybe there's a connection there. And if the crying child is indeed Michael, as I've talked about a lot in past theories, Henry literally rebuilding his lost son, like he does his lost daughter in the books, explains all of the weirdness of Mike's behavior throughout the series. How he's able to survive being scooped, how he has fragmented memories of his past, how he doesn't die after puking up mom's robot spaghetti, how he's only able to die by fire.
I should be dead, but I'm not.
It's also worth noting that at no point in the series is Michael ever explicitly identified as Michael Afton. Now, it seems like Mike in Sister Location is referring to William Afton as father.
Father, it's me, Michael.
And him saying,
I'm going to come find you.
As Springtrap appears, definitely makes it seem like he's going out and looking for William, but that may just be another Scott misdirect. It's open to interpretation. I mean, this scene alone still has people convinced that Springtrap is Mike trapped inside of the suit. Mike Trap, even though I feel like it's pretty well established at this point that it's William Afton in there. It's still Will Trapp. But there are people who are vehemently determined that Mike Trapp is the reality of the canon of this series. Regardless of the whole Michael stuff, William Afton in these books is all about achieving immortality through the robots. He's interested in the science of it all. He wants to study the original Fnaf gang and replicate the living metal that resulted from their deaths. That's why we see him tearing apart the robots in Fnaf 3's minigames. He wants access to their metal. He wants to harvest it to run experiments. He wants to melt down those living endoskeletons so he can harness the possessed metal to create the Funtime animatronics. I mean, that is the whole point of Candy Cadet's stories in Fnaf 6. 5 things melted down to create one thing, and it's exactly what we see happen as a huge plot point in the final book. Henry, on the other hand, is the emotional one. He's a creator who gets too invested in his own work. He's a bit of a neglectful father while he's alive, but he's devastated when he loses his daughter, turning to the one and only thing that he knows and understands to try and bring her back: robots. He goes to extreme lengths to use his robotic skills to try and bring her back to life, and he does it. He succeeds. He creates the most absurdly lifelike humanoid animatronics ever in science fiction. And they have to be to do some of the stuff that you see happen in these books because it is absurd. But if we are truly meant to apply the themes of these books to the games, then this isn't the Afton family household. It doesn't make sense. It's the Emily family household. It would explain the factory under the house. It would explain the empty girl's bedroom in Fnaf 4. It would explain the 1983 date that we're presented with. It would say why Mustard Man is yellow, why there are footprints outside the window, why the crying child is suddenly scared of Freddy's, and it would even go so far as to explain the line, "I will put you back together." I mean, are there holes to this thing? Absolutely. Are there things that are difficult to explain? Are you kidding me? This is FNAF. Gonna be true no matter this is William's house, Henry's house, or the frickin' White House. It's an extreme theory, but I think it's one that's worth considering because of its alignment with the books, and because of the lingering threads that it answers. Which is why today, I encourage you to discuss down below in the comments, discuss over on Reddit, and most importantly to remember that it's all just a theory. A game theory! Thanks for watching.